The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the dusty general store in Bandera, Texas, and Victoria Foster stumbled out with tears streaming down her face, her cheeks blotched red from crying for what felt like 300 miles straight. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the small frontier town, casting harsh shadows across the wooden storefronts that lined the main street. Her traveling dress was wrinkled and stained with dust. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins, and she clutched a single worn carpetbag that held everything she owned in the world. The letter, crumpled in her other hand, had promised her a new life as the bride of Samuel Morrison, a prosperous rancher who needed a wife. But when she had telegraphed ahead from San Antonio to confirm her arrival, the response had shattered her completely. Samuel Morrison had died 2 weeks ago in a riding accident. She stood there on the wooden boardwalk, completely alone in a town where she knew no one, with exactly $4.30 to her name, no family to return to back east, and nowhere else to go. The few people passing by stared at her with curious but not unkind expressions, clearly wondering about the weeping woman who had just arrived on the afternoon stage. Victoria tried to compose herself, tried to stop the tears, but the weight of her situation crashed over her again, and she let out a choked sob that made an elderly woman crossing the street pause and shake her head sympathetically. "Miss, are you all right?" The deep voice made her look up through her tears. The man standing before her was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly beneath his worn hat. His eyes were a striking shade of gray-blue, and they held genuine concern as he looked at her. He wore dusty work clothes, leather chaps over denim pants, and the unmistakable bearing of someone who spent his life working with cattle and horses. Despite her distress, Victoria noticed he had a kind face, maybe a few years older than her own 22 years, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. "I am sorry, I do not mean to cause a scene," Victoria managed to say, her voice trembling as she tried to wipe her eyes with her handkerchief. "I have just arrived and I have received terrible news." The cowboy removed his hat respectfully, revealing more of his tanned face. "I am Zachary Quinn. I own a spread about 5 miles west of town. You look like you could use some help, miss." "Victoria Foster," she replied automatically, then fresh tears spilled over. "I came here to marry Samuel Morrison, but he is dead. The telegram said he died 2 weeks ago, and I had already left Philadelphia, and I have nowhere to go and hardly any money, and I do not know what to do." She watched as understanding and sympathy crossed Zachary's face. He glanced around at the people who had slowed their walking to observe the scene, then looked back at her with decision in his eyes. "Sam Morrison was a good man and a friend of mine," Zachary said quietly. "I am real sorry you came all this way for such heartbreak, but listen to me, Miss Foster." He stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "You are going to be all right. This is a hard land, but there are good people here. Why do you not come out to my ranch? My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, she is a widow woman who helps me run the house. You can stay there, catch your breath, figure out what you want to do next. I promise you will be safe and proper." Victoria stared at him through her tears, hardly daring to believe this stranger was offering her help when her whole world had collapsed. "I could not impose on you like that. You do not even know me." "That is true enough," Zachary agreed, and the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "But Sam was going to marry you, which means you are brave enough to travel halfway across the country to start a new life. That tells me you have courage, and right now you need help. My ma raised me to never turn away from someone in need, especially not a lady who has just received such terrible news." He reached out and very gently took the handkerchief from her trembling fingers, then carefully dried the tears from her cheeks with a tenderness that made Victoria's heart clench. The gesture was so unexpectedly kind, so personal yet respectful, that she found herself unable to speak for a moment. "You are home now, darling," Zachary said softly, the endearment slipping out naturally. "I know it does not feel like it yet, but you are safe here. Let me help you." Something in his voice, in those steady gray-blue eyes, made Victoria feel like maybe, just maybe, she could trust this man. She had no other options anyway, but more than that, something in her gut told her Zachary Quinn was exactly what he appeared to be. A good man offering genuine help. "Thank you," she whispered. "I accept your kindness, Mr. Quinn." "Call me Zachary, or Zach if you prefer," he said, settling his hat back on his head. "Let me get your trunk loaded up." "This bag is all I have," Victoria admitted, feeling embarrassed by how little she possessed. Zachary's expression darkened slightly, not at her but seemingly at whatever circumstances had left her with so little. "Well then, that makes it easier to get you settled. My wagon is just over at the livery. Come on." He offered her his arm, and Victoria took it gratefully, her legs still shaky from the long journey and the emotional devastation of the last hour. As they walked down the boardwalk toward the livery stable, she noticed people nodding respectfully to Zachary. He was clearly well known and well regarded in Bandera. "How long have you known Samuel Morrison?" Victoria asked, partly to make conversation and partly because she wanted to know more about the man she had been supposed to marry. "About 6 years," Zachary replied. "He came out here from Virginia right after the war ended, same as a lot of folks looking for a fresh start. He worked hard, built up a decent ranch. He was a good neighbor, honest in his dealings. He talked about sending for a bride, but I did not realize he had actually done it. I am powerful sorry you did not get the chance to meet him. He would have treated you well." "Did he have any family?" Victoria asked. "A brother back in Virginia, from what I understand. I expect someone sent word to him. Sam did not talk much about his past." Zachary helped her up onto the wagon seat, then swung her carpet bag into the back before climbing up beside her. "The ranch will probably go to the brother, unless Sam left a will saying different." As they drove out of town, Victoria tried to take in her surroundings despite her emotional exhaustion. The landscape was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. Rolling hills covered in scrub brush and live oak trees stretched in every direction, and the sky seemed impossibly vast and blue. The heat was intense, nothing like the humid summers in Philadelphia, and everything seemed to shimmer in the afternoon sun. "Tell me about your ranch," Victoria said, wanting to focus on something other than her predicament. Zachary seemed pleased by the question. "The Quinn Ranch has about 3,000 acres. I run mostly cattle, some horses. Got about 20 hands working for me, good men mostly. We are not the biggest operation around here, but we do all right." The house was built by the previous owner, man named Henderson, who sold out and went back east about 4 years ago. It is a solid house, stone and timber, built to last. Mrs. Chen keeps it proper. She is Chinese, came here with her husband who worked for the railroad. When he died about 2 years back, she needed work and I needed someone to manage the house since I am not much for cooking and cleaning. She is a good woman, excellent cook, and she will be glad of female company. "You are not married?" Victoria asked, then immediately felt her face flush. "I apologize, that was too forward." "No offense taken," Zachary said easily. "No, I am not married. I was engaged once, about 3 years back, to a girl named Sarah. But she decided ranch life was not for her and went back to St. Louis. Cannot say I blame her much. It is a hard life out here, especially for women. Takes a special kind of strength." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the wagon creaking along the rutted road. Victoria found herself studying Zachary from the corner of her eye. He had strong, capable hands on the reins, and he handled the team with easy confidence. There was something solid and reassuring about him, something that made her feel safer than she had felt since leaving Philadelphia. "Why did you leave Philadelphia?" Zachary asked after a while. Victoria had known the question would come eventually. "My parents died of cholera 3 years ago. I have been living with my aunt and uncle since then, but my uncle is a difficult man with a temper and too much fondness for whiskey. My aunt suggested I might be happier making a new start out west. She helped me respond to Mr. Morrison's advertisement for a bride. She gave me her own mother's wedding ring to bring with me." Victoria touched the simple gold band hanging on a chain around her neck. "I think she felt guilty for not protecting me better from my uncle's moods. Did he hurt you?" Zachary's voice had gone hard and flat. "Not in any permanent way," Victoria said carefully. "Mostly he yelled and threw things, but I knew it was only a matter of time before his temper turned more violent. When I saw Mr. Morrison's advertisement seeking an educated, respectable woman to be his wife, it seemed like Providence. He sounded kind in his letters." "He was kind," Zachary confirmed. "You would have been happy with him, I think." The Quinn ranch appeared on the horizon as they crested a hill, and Victoria felt her breath catch. The house was indeed solid and impressive, built of limestone blocks with a wide covered porch that wrapped around at least 2 sides. Several outbuildings dotted the property, including a large barn, a bunkhouse, corrals, and what looked like a smokehouse. Trees had been planted around the main house, providing shade, and there was even a small vegetable garden visible behind a fence. "It is beautiful," Victoria said sincerely. "It is home," Zachary replied, and she could hear the pride in his voice. "I have put a lot of work into this place over the years." As they pulled up to the house, a small, weathered Chinese woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her face was lined with years and hardship, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Mrs. Chen, this is Miss Victoria Foster," Zachary called out as he helped Victoria down from the wagon. She just arrived in Bandera to marry Sam Morrison, but she did not know he had passed. She is going to stay with us for a while, as our guest. "Can you prepare the guest room?" Mrs. Chen's expression shifted immediately from curiosity to sympathy. She hurried down the porch steps and took Victoria's hands in her own work-roughened ones. "Oh, you poor child. Come inside, come inside. You must be exhausted and heartbroken. I will make tea and draw you a bath. Mr. Zach, bring her bag to the blue room." Victoria found herself swept into the house by the older woman's kindness. The interior was clean and well-maintained, with simple but solid furniture and colorful rugs on the wooden floors. Mrs. Chen led her to a comfortable bedroom with a large window overlooking the side yard. The bed was covered with a beautiful quilt in shades of blue and white, and there was a washstand with a pitcher and basin, a wardrobe, and even a small desk with a chair. "You rest now," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "I will bring water for washing, then tea and something to eat. You have had a terrible shock. Sleep will help." Victoria wanted to protest that she was being too much trouble, but the truth was she felt absolutely drained. The long journey, the devastating news, the uncertainty of her situation, all of it crashed over her at once. She sank down onto the bed and felt tears starting again. Mrs. Chen sat beside her and patted her hand. "Cry if you need to. Tears are not weakness, they are how the heart heals. But you are safe here, you understand. Mr. Zach is a good man, one of the best I have known. He will not let any harm come to you. He is very kind," Victoria managed to say. "You both are. I do not know how to repay such generosity." "No talk of repayment," Mrs. Chen said firmly. Out here we help each other. That is how we survive. Now I will get that water." After Mrs. Chen left, Victoria stood and walked to the window. From here she could see Zachary unhitching the wagon team, his movements efficient and practiced. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up at the window and gave her a small wave. She waved back, feeling a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with her grief over Samuel Morrison. She scolded herself immediately. What was she thinking? She had just lost her intended husband, she had nowhere else to go, and here she was noticing how handsome her host was. It was completely inappropriate. And yet, she could not deny that something about Zachary Quinn made her feel things she had not expected to feel. When he had dried her tears and called her darling, when he had told her she was home now, something in her had responded with an intensity that surprised her. Victoria unpacked her meager belongings, hanging her 2 dresses in the wardrobe and placing her few personal items on the dresser. She had a daguerreotype of her parents, a book of poetry that had been her mother's, a sewing kit, and the letters Samuel Morrison had sent her. She looked at those letters now, feeling guilt that she could not muster more grief for a man she had never met. She had been prepared to marry him, to make a life with him, but she had not loved him. How could she? They had never even spoken face to face. Mrs. Chen returned with a large pitcher of warm water and fresh towels. "Wash up and rest. I will call you for supper. We eat at 6 o'clock. It will be just you, me, and Mr. Zach tonight. The ranch hands eat in the bunkhouse." After washing away the travel dust and changing into her other dress, a simple blue cotton that was much cooler than the traveling dress, Victoria did lie down. She had not expected to sleep, but exhaustion claimed her quickly. She woke to the sound of someone knocking gently on her door. "Miss Foster." "Supper is ready," Mrs. Chen called. Victoria sat up, disoriented for a moment, then remembered where she was. The light coming through the window had changed to the golden glow of early evening. She had slept for several hours. "I will be right there," she called back, standing and smoothing her dress. She pinned up her hair properly and pinched her cheeks to bring some color back into them. Her eyes were still red from crying, but there was nothing to be done about that. The dining room was modestly sized, with a large table that could probably seat 10 people. Tonight it was set for 3 at one end. Zachary had changed his shirt and cleaned up, his dark hair still damp. He stood when she entered. "Miss Foster, I hope you were able to rest. Please call me Victoria, and yes, thank you. I did not mean to sleep so long." "You needed it," Mrs. Chen said, bringing in a platter of roasted chicken. Sit. We have chicken, potatoes, greens from the garden, and biscuits." The food was delicious and plentiful. Victoria had not realized how hungry she was until she started eating. The conversation was light during the meal, with Zachary telling her more about the ranch and the area, pointing out that Bandera was known for its cypress trees and the beautiful Medina River that ran nearby. "If you are staying for a while, I can take you to see the river," Zachary offered. "It is real pretty, especially in the evening." "I would like that," Victoria said, then hesitated. "But I need to think about what I am going to do. I cannot impose on your hospitality indefinitely." Zachary set down his fork and looked at her seriously. "Victoria, you are not imposing. I meant what I said earlier. You are welcome to stay here as long as you need. Mrs. Chen can always use help in the house if you want to feel useful, but there is no pressure. Take some time to figure out what you want to do." "There are not many options for a single woman in a town like Bandera," Mrs. Chen added. "But there are some. The school teacher is getting old and talks about retiring. The general store owner's wife just had twins and could probably use help. And some of the bigger ranches hire women for cooking and cleaning. You are educated, yes." "Yes, I attended a young ladies' academy in Philadelphia. I can read and write. I know arithmetic, history, literature. I can sew and do basic cooking, though I am sure nothing like your wonderful meal, Mrs. Chen. Good skills, the older woman nodded approvingly. You will find a place here if you want to stay. This is a growing town, more people coming all the time. After supper, Zachary invited Victoria to sit on the porch while the evening cooled down. Mrs. Chen shooed them out, saying she would handle the cleanup. Victoria settled into a comfortable rocking chair while Zachary leaned against the porch railing, looking out over his land. It is a different world from Philadelphia, I imagine, he said. Very different, Victoria agreed. But not in a bad way. It is beautiful here in a wild sort of way. Everything feels bigger, more open. That is exactly it, Zachary said, sounding pleased. That is what I love about it. Back east, everything feels hemmed in, closed off. Out here, a person can breathe. Can build something that is truly their own. Is that why you came to Texas? Victoria asked. Zachary was quiet for a moment. I came here because I needed a fresh start. I grew up in Missouri on a farm outside Kansas City. My pa died when I was 14, and I had to grow up fast to help my ma and younger sisters. When the war came, I joined up, fought for the Union. I was just 17 when I enlisted, lied about my age. I saw things during that war that no person should have to see. When it was over, I could not go back to farming in Missouri. Too many memories, too many ghosts. My ma had remarried by then, to a good man who could take care of her and my sisters. So I came to Texas in 1867, worked as a ranch hand for a few years, saved every penny, and bought this land when old man Henderson decided to sell. That was 4 years ago, and I have been building it up ever since. You should be proud, Victoria said softly. You have built something impressive. It is a good life, Zachary said. Hard work but honest. I answer to no man but myself, and I treat my employees fair. It is what I always wanted, even if I did not know it when I was younger. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. Victoria found herself relaxing in a way she had not relaxed in months, maybe years. Despite the uncertainty of her situation, despite everything that had gone wrong, she felt safe here. Zachary's presence was reassuring without being overwhelming, and Mrs. Chen's motherly care was something Victoria had been missing desperately since her own mother died. What was Samuel Morrison like? Victoria asked after a while. You said he was your friend. I would like to know about him, if you do not mind talking about it. Zachary pushed off from the railing and came to sit in the other rocking chair. Sam was a quiet man, thoughtful. He was not quick to anger, and he always tried to see the best in people. He loved this land, loved raising cattle. He had a good sense of humor once you got to know him. He used to say that he had run away from one life in Virginia and was building a better one here in Texas. I think he would have been a good husband to you. He talked about wanting a family, wanting to share his life with someone. He just ran out of time. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes again, but they were gentler now. I wish I could have met him. I wish I could have had the chance to know him. He would have liked you, Zachary said. From what little I have seen, you are brave and strong. Those are qualities Sam admired. I do not feel very brave right now, Victoria admitted. I feel lost and frightened. That is when real courage shows, Zachary said. Anyone can be brave when things are going well. It is when everything falls apart that you find out what you are really made of. And you are still here, still standing, still willing to face tomorrow. That is courage, Victoria. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw nothing but sincerity in his face. This man barely knew her, yet he had offered her shelter and comfort without asking for anything in return. It was more than her own uncle had done, her own flesh and blood. "Thank you, Zachary," she said quietly, "for everything, for helping me today, for bringing me here, for your kindness. I will not forget it." "No thanks necessary," he replied, holding her gaze. "I am just glad I was in town today. I do not come in every day, usually just once or twice a week for supplies. If you had arrived yesterday or tomorrow, I might not have been there. It feels like fate that I was." "Perhaps it was," Victoria said softly. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Victoria felt the first stirrings of hope. Her plan had fallen apart completely, but maybe, just maybe, there was a different plan forming. One she had never expected, one she had never even imagined. And at the center of it was a gray-eyed cowboy who had dried her tears and told her she was home. Over the next few days, Victoria fell into a routine at the Quinn ranch. She insisted on helping Mrs. Chen with the household tasks, finding comfort in the familiar work of cooking, cleaning, and mending. Mrs. Chen was glad of the help and proved to be patient in teaching Victoria the particular challenges of keeping house in West Texas, where dust was a constant battle and water had to be conserved carefully. Zachary was often out working with his cattle during the day, but he made a point of being at the house for meals. Victoria found herself looking forward to these times, when they could talk about everything and nothing. He told her stories about the ranch, about his men, about the occasional problems with rustlers or wild animals. She told him about her childhood in Philadelphia, about her parents, about the books she loved to read. One evening about a week after her arrival, Zachary asked if she would like to go riding the next day to see more of the ranch. Victoria admitted she had never actually been on a horse, which made him laugh in a kind way. "Well then, we will have to fix that," he said. "Every Texan should know how to ride. I've got a gentle mare named Daisy who is perfect for beginners. We will take it slow." The next morning, Victoria changed into her most practical dress and met Zachary at the barn. The mare he let out was a pretty chestnut with a white blaze on her face and soft, intelligent eyes. "This is Daisy," Zachary introduced them. "She is about the sweetest-tempered horse you will ever meet. Here, give her this apple piece." Victoria cautiously held out the apple slice on her flat palm, the way Zachary showed her, and laughed with delight when Daisy gently lifted up. "She is lovely. Now, I am going to teach you how to mount," Zachary said. "It is easier if I give you a boost at first. Put your left foot in the stirrup, hold onto the saddle horn, and I will help you up." It took a few tries, with Victoria laughing at her own clumsiness, but finally she was seated in the saddle. The ground seemed very far away suddenly. "That is it," Zachary encouraged. "Now just relax. Daisy can feel if you are tense. Hold the reins like this, gentle but firm. You are not trying to force her, just guide her. That is right, perfect." He mounted his own horse, a big black gelding named Thunder, with easy grace. "We will just walk today, let you get the feel of it. Ready?" They set out slowly, with Zachary keeping Thunder right beside Daisy. At first, Victoria was rigid with nervousness, but gradually she began to relax and feel the rhythm of Daisy's walking gait. It was actually quite pleasant once she stopped being scared. Zachary took her on a route that showed off the best parts of his land. They rode through areas of open grassland where his cattle grazed peacefully, through stands of live oak trees that provided blessed shade, and eventually to a high point where they could see for miles in every direction. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Zachary said as they stopped to let the horses rest. "On a clear day, you can see almost to San Antonio." "It is breathtaking," Victoria said, and she meant it. The landscape rolled out before them in shades of green and gold, under a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. I can understand why you love it here. This land gets in your blood, Zachary said. It is not easy living, but it is real. You know you are alive every single day. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just looking out over the view. Victoria was acutely aware of Zachary beside her, of the way he sat his horse so naturally, of the strength in his profile as he gazed out over his land. She was developing feelings for him. She could no longer deny it. Every day those feelings grew stronger. Every conversation made her admire him more. "Victoria," Zachary said suddenly, turning to look at her, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Have you thought any more about what you want to do?" "I do not mean to press you. You can stay as long as you like. But I am curious if you have made any decisions." Victoria took a deep breath. "I have been thinking about it constantly, actually. I think I would like to stay in Bandera if I can find a way to support myself. I do not want to go back east. There is nothing for me there. But here I feel like I could build a life. Does that make sense?" "It makes perfect sense," Zachary said, his face lighting up. "I am real glad to hear it. And I meant what I said. You are welcome at the ranch as long as you need. Mrs. Chen has been happier this past week than I have seen her in a long time. She likes having another woman to talk to." "She has been wonderful," Victoria said warmly. "You both have. I cannot imagine what would have happened to me if you had not been in town that day." "I am glad I was there," Zachary said, his voice dropping lower. "Real glad." Something in the way he said it made Victoria's heart skip. The air between them felt charged suddenly, full of possibility. Zachary held her gaze for a long moment, and Victoria saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Interest, attraction, perhaps even the beginnings of deeper feelings. But then he looked away, clearing his throat. "We should head back. I do not want you getting too saddle sore on your first ride." The ride back was quiet but not uncomfortable. Victoria's mind was racing, trying to understand what had just happened, what that moment had meant. Did Zachary have feelings for her? Or was she just imagining it because of her own growing attachment to him? That evening at supper, Mrs. Chen had news. "I was talking to Mrs. Robertson at church last Sunday," she said. "You remember Mr. Zach, the family that runs the general store. Their daughter Clara is the school teacher, and she is getting married next month to that banker fellow from Careville. She will be moving away, which means the school needs a new teacher. I told Mrs. Robertson about you, Miss Victoria, about your education. She would like to meet you, see if you might be interested in the position." Victoria's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Really? A teaching position? It does not pay a lot," Mrs. Chen continued, "but it comes with a small house, the old teacher's cottage behind the school. You would have your own place, your independence, and the town respects the school teacher. It is a good position for a single woman." "That sounds wonderful," Victoria said, excitement bubbling up. "When can I meet with her?" "We can go into town tomorrow if you like," Zachary offered. "I need to pick up some supplies anyway." That night, Victoria lay in bed feeling more hopeful than she had since leaving Philadelphia. A teaching position would give her purpose, independence, and a place in the community. She could build a real life here, become part of Bandera. It was more than she had dared to hope for. But as excited as she was about the possibility, a small part of her felt sad. If she moved to the teacher's cottage, she would not be living at the ranch anymore. She would not see Zachary every day, would not have those morning conversations over breakfast or evening talks on the porch. She had grown to treasure those moments, to look forward to them with an intensity that probably was not appropriate given that she had been meant to marry another man only a few weeks ago. The next day, Zachary drove her into Bandera in the wagon. She had put on her best dress, the one she had planned to wear to meet Samuel Morrison, and done her hair carefully. She wanted to make a good impression. Mrs. Robertson turned out to be a plump, cheerful woman with graying hair and shrewd eyes. She met with Victoria in the back room of the general store, asking her questions about her education, her experience with children, and her reasons for wanting to teach. "I believe education is one of the most important things we can give children," Victoria said honestly. "My own mother was a school teacher before she married, and she instilled in me a love of learning. I would be honored to have the opportunity to pass that on to the children of Bandera." Mrs. Robertson nodded approvingly. "The school has about 20 students, ages 6 to 14. Some of them are ranch children who only come during the winter months when they are not needed for work. You would teach reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and geography. The school year runs from September through May. It is hard work, Miss Foster, and some of the older boys can be challenging. But it is rewarding work too." "I understand," Victoria said. "I am not afraid of hard work, Mrs. Robertson." "I can see that," the older woman said, her expression softening. "I heard about what happened about Samuel Morrison. I am very sorry for your loss and for the difficult situation it put you in. But Zach Quinn is a good man for taking you in. His mother raised him right." "He has been very kind," Victoria agreed, feeling her cheeks warm slightly. Mrs. Robertson's eyes sharpened with interest at Victoria's blush, but she did not comment on it. "Well, Miss Foster, I think you would do very well as our school teacher. If you are willing to accept the position, I would like to offer it to you. The salary is $30 a month, plus the cottage rent-free. You would start in September when the new school year begins. That gives you about 6 weeks to settle in and prepare." $30 a month was not a fortune, but it was enough to live on modestly, especially with no rent to pay. Victoria felt joy and relief wash over her. "I accept, Mrs. Robertson. Thank you so much for this opportunity." "Welcome to Bandera, Miss Foster," Mrs. Robertson said, standing to shake her hand. "I think you are going to do just fine here. Now, would you like to see the cottage?" The teacher's cottage was small but charming. Just a single room with a sleeping area separated by a curtain, a tiny kitchen area with a wood stove, and a sitting area with a fireplace. It had a door and 2 windows, all in good repair, and it had clearly been cleaned recently. There was basic furniture, a bed, a table with 2 chairs, a dresser, and a comfortable-looking armchair by the fireplace. "The previous teacher left most of the furniture," Mrs. Robertson explained. "Said it would be too much trouble to move it all the way to Careville. You will need to provide your own linens and kitchen things, but the basics are here." "It is perfect," Victoria said, walking to the window and looking out at the school building next door. "Absolutely perfect." When she emerged from the cottage, she found Zachary waiting by the wagon, leaning against it with his arms crossed. He straightened when he saw her expression. "Good news?" he asked. "I got the position," Victoria said, unable to keep the smile off her face. "I am the new school teacher of Bandera, Texas." "That is wonderful," Zachary said, and his smile seemed genuine. But Victoria thought she detected something else in his eyes, something that might have been disappointment. "I am real happy for you, Victoria. You are going to be a great teacher." "I will not start until September," Victoria explained as they climbed back into the wagon. Mrs. Robertson said, "I can move into the cottage any time between now and then to get settled. But I was hoping, if it is not too much of an imposition, that I could stay at the ranch a bit longer. I could pay you rent from my first few salaries." "You will do no such thing," Zachary said firmly as he guided the horses out of town. "You are welcome to stay at the ranch as long as you want. Like I said before, Mrs. Chen enjoys having you around, and so do I. There is no rush for you to leave." They were quiet for most of the ride back, both lost in their own thoughts. Victoria was thrilled about the teaching position, but she could not shake a feeling of melancholy. Once she moved into the cottage, her time with Zachary would be limited. She would see him occasionally in town, maybe at church on Sundays if he attended, but not every day like now. And she was going to miss him terribly. When did he become so important to her? She tried to tell herself it was just gratitude, just the natural affection that comes from being helped in a time of desperate need. But she knew it was more than that. She admired Zachary's strength and kindness, his work ethic, and his gentle humor. She loved the way he treated everyone with respect, from Mrs. Chen to his ranch hands to the horses. She loved how his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how his voice got soft when he talked about his land, how he always seemed to know exactly what to say to make her feel better. She was falling in love with him, and she had no idea if he felt the same way. That evening, Zachary seemed distracted during supper. He answered questions absently and excused himself early, saying he had to check on one of the horses who had seemed off earlier. Victoria helped Mrs. Chen clean up, and the older woman gave her a knowing look. "He will miss you when you move to town," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "I will miss being here," Victoria replied carefully. "You have both been so kind to me." "That boy has not looked at a woman the way he looks at you since Sarah left," Mrs. Chen said bluntly. "And he looked at you different than he ever looked at her, truth be told. He cares for you, Miss Victoria, more than he probably should, given that you have only been here 2 weeks." Victoria felt her heart start to pound. "I do not know what to say. I have feelings for him too, but it seems wrong somehow. I was supposed to marry Samuel Morrison. It has barely been any time at all since I learned of his death. What kind of woman does that make me, Mrs. Chen put a hand on her shoulder. "It makes you human. You cannot grieve for a man you never met, not truly. Samuel Morrison was a good man, and his death was a tragedy, but he was never yours. Zachary is here, he is real, and he makes you happy. I see it in your eyes every time you look at him. Do not let propriety or other people's opinions stop you from taking a chance at happiness. Life is too short and too hard, especially out here." Victoria lay awake late that night, thinking about Mrs. Chen's words. Was it really possible that Zachary had feelings for her? And if he did, what should she do about it? The proper thing would be to wait, to observe a period of mourning for Samuel Morrison even though she had never met him. But as Mrs. Chen said, life was short. She had learned that lesson brutally when her parents died. Opportunities for happiness did not come along often, and when they did, perhaps they should be seized. The next few weeks passed in a strange sort of limbo. Victoria continued to help around the ranch, learning more each day about the rhythms of ranch life. She met some of Zachary's ranch hands, good men with weathered faces and ready smiles who treated her with respect. She learned to ride better, with Zachary taking her out several times a week. She helped Mrs. Chen with the garden and the chickens. She even learned the basics of mending leather tack, since that was a constant need on a working ranch. And through it all, the tension between her and Zachary seemed to grow. There were moments when their eyes would meet and hold for just a second too long. Times when their hands would brush accidentally, and neither would pull away immediately. Conversations that felt weighted with unspoken words. One evening in early August, about 3 weeks after Victoria had accepted the teaching position, Zachary asked if she would like to ride out to see the Medina River. "It is real pretty at sunset," he said, "and I have been promising to show it to you." They rode out in the late afternoon, taking their time. Victoria had become much more comfortable on horseback, and Daisy responded to her cues naturally now. The route to the river took them through some of the most beautiful country Victoria had yet seen, through stands of huge cypress trees that made her gasp with wonder. The Medner River was indeed beautiful, a clear stream running over limestone rocks, bordered by cypress and oak trees. Zachary dismounted and helped Victoria down, tying the horses where they could drink and graze. "Let me show you the best spot," he said, offering his hand to help her over the rocks. He led her to a place where large, flat rocks created a natural seating area right at the water's edge. The evening sun filtered through the trees, creating dancing patterns of light on the water's surface. Birds called to each other in the branches overhead, and the sound of the running water was peaceful and soothing. "This is magical," Victoria said, sitting down on one of the rocks. "Thank you for bringing me here." Zachary sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "I have always loved this spot. It feels separate from the rest of the world somehow, peaceful." They sat in silence for a while, just watching the water and the changing light. Victoria felt her heart racing, felt the awareness of him beside her like an electric current in the air. "Victoria," Zachary said finally, his voice low, "I need to tell you something." She turned to look at him, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. There was vulnerability there and hope, and something that looked a lot like love. "I know it has not been very long," he continued. "And I know the circumstances of how we met were not ideal. But Victoria, I have come to care for you. More than care for you, if I am being honest. These past weeks having you at the ranch, talking to you every day, watching you fit into life here like you were always meant to be part of it. You have become important to me. Real important." "Zachary," Victoria whispered, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Let me finish," he said, reaching out to take her hand. His touch was gentle but firm, and Victoria could feel the calluses on his palm from years of hard work. "I know you were meant to marry Sam Morrison. I know you are still probably sorting out your feelings about all of that. But I need you to know how I feel. When you move into that cottage, when you start your new life as the school teacher, I want to court you properly. I want to take you to church socials and bring you flowers and show everyone in Bandera that I am serious about you, if you will let me. If you feel anything like what I feel." "I do," Victoria said, squeezing his hand. "Zachary, I do feel the same way. I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it was too soon, that it was not proper. But I cannot help it. You have been so kind to me, but it is more than that. You make me laugh. You make me feel safe. You make me want to be brave enough to build a new life here. I care about you so much." The smile that broke across Zachary's face was like the sun coming out. "Really? You really mean that?" "Yes," Victoria said, laughing at his boyish enthusiasm. "Really? Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice suddenly serious. "I know I should wait, should court you proper first, but Victoria, I have wanted to kiss you for weeks now." "Yes," she breathed. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she did not. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, almost hesitant. But then Victoria responded, her free hand coming up to cup his cheek, and the kiss deepened. It was everything a first kiss should be, sweet and tender and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Zachary rested his forehead against hers, still holding her hand. "You are amazing," he whispered. "I still cannot believe you are real, that you are here." "I almost was not," Victoria said. "If you had not been in town that day, if you had not helped me, I do not know what would have happened." "I told you it was fate," Zachary said. "I really believe that. You were meant to come to Bandera, maybe not for Sam Morrison, but for me, for us." They stayed by the river until the sun began to set properly, talking about everything and nothing, stealing more kisses, planning their future. Zachary wanted her to meet his mother and sisters, who still lived in Missouri. Victoria wanted to write to her aunt, to tell her that everything had worked out better than either of them could have hoped. "We should probably head back," Zachary said reluctantly as the light began to fade. Mrs. Chen will worry. On the ride back, Victoria felt like she was floating. Everything had changed in the space of a few hours. She had gone from uncertain and alone to being courted by a wonderful man who made her heart sing. It seemed too good to be true, but it was real. Zachary's hand had held hers, his lips had kissed hers, and he had told her he cared for her. Mrs. Chen took one look at them when they arrived back at the ranch and broke into a wide smile. "Well, it is about time," she said. "I was beginning to think you two would dance around each other forever." "You knew?" Zachary asked, looking embarrassed. "Of course I knew," Mrs. Chen said, rolling her eyes. "I am old, not blind. Now come eat supper before it gets cold. And Miss Victoria, you are glowing like a lantern. It is good to see." Over the next few weeks, Zachary courted Victoria in earnest. They attended church together on Sundays, where Victoria was introduced to more of the community. She met other ranching families, merchants from town, and several other women who welcomed her warmly. The story of her arrival in Bandera and how Zachary had helped her had already made the rounds, as stories do in small towns, and most people seemed to view their courtship as romantic rather than scandalous. There were a few raised eyebrows from the more judgmental residents, who thought it was too soon after Samuel Morrison's death for Victoria to be courting someone else. But even they could not find much to criticize when it became clear that Victoria and Zachary were both respectable people genuinely caring for each other. Zachary brought her flowers, wildflowers picked from the fields around the ranch. He took her on picnics and rides through the beautiful Texas countryside. He taught her more about ranching, about the cattle and horses, about reading the weather and the land. Victoria soaked it all in, loving every moment. She also began preparing for her teaching position, making lists of supplies she would need, thinking about how she wanted to organize the classroom. Mrs. Robertson gave her the books and materials left by the previous teacher, and Victoria spent hours going through them, planning lessons. In late August, Victoria moved into the teacher's cottage. It was bittersweet, leaving the ranch and Mrs. Chen's daily company, but Victoria was also excited to have her own space, to set up her own household. Zachary and several of his ranch hands helped her move her few belongings, which had grown slightly. Mrs. Chen had given her some kitchen items and linens, and the women of Bandera had donated various household goods when they learned the new teacher was setting up house. "It is tradition," Mrs. Robertson explained when she arrived with a box of dishes. "We take care of our own here." The cottage felt like home almost immediately. Victoria hung curtains she had sewn herself, arranged her books on a small shelf Zachary had built for her, and set up her tiny kitchen. She placed the daguerreotype of her parents on the dresser and hung her mother's quilt on the wall as decoration. The night before school was to start, Victoria was nervous. Zachary came by with a bouquet of flowers and a gift wrapped in brown paper. "I wanted to give you something for your first day," he said, suddenly looking shy. Victoria unwrapped the paper to find a beautiful leather journal and a set of good pens. On the first page, Zachary had written in careful handwriting, "For Miss Victoria Foster, the best teacher Bandera will ever have. With love, Zachary Quinn." "It is beautiful," Victoria said, tears pricking her eyes. "Thank you so much. I thought you might like to keep notes about your students or lesson plans, or maybe just your thoughts," Zachary said. "My handwriting is not very fancy, but I wanted you to have something from me to mark the occasion." "It is perfect," Victoria said, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. They had grown more comfortable with physical affection over the past weeks, though they were always careful to be proper in public. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" Zachary asked. "Terrified," Victoria admitted with a laugh. "What if the children do not like me? What if I am a terrible teacher? You are going to be wonderful, Zachary said firmly. You are smart and patient and kind. Those children are lucky to have you. His confidence in her helped settle Victoria's nerves. That night she slept better than she had expected, and she woke early to prepare for her first day. The school bell rang at 8 o'clock sharp, and children began arriving with their parents. Victoria stood at the door to greet each one, learning names and ages, shaking hands with mothers and fathers who eyed her curiously. Most seemed friendly, pleased to have a new teacher who was young and educated and enthusiastic. The day was challenging but rewarding. The children ranged from 6-year-old Emma, who was just learning her letters, to 14-year-old Thomas, who was studying advanced arithmetic and already knew more than some adults. Victoria divided them into groups by age and ability, rotating between them throughout the day to provide instruction and guidance. By the time she dismissed the students at 3 o'clock, Victoria was exhausted but exhilarated. She had done it. She had taught her first day of school, and it had gone well. Not perfectly, there had been a few discipline issues and she had gotten behind on her planned schedule, but overall it had been good. That evening, Zachary came by with supper from Mrs. Chen. She insisted, he said when Victoria protested that he did not need to feed her. She said you would be too tired to cook after your first day, and she wanted to make sure you ate properly. They sat together at Victoria's small table, and she told him all about her day, about the students and the lessons and the small victories and challenges. Zachary listened attentively, asking questions and offering encouragement. "I am so proud of you," he said when she finally wound down. "You did it, Victoria. You really built a new life here." "We did it," Victoria corrected, reaching across the table to take his hand. "I could not have done any of this without you. You saved me, Zachary, in every way a person can be saved." As fall progressed into winter, Victoria settled into her dual roles as teacher and Zachary's girl, as the town had started calling her. She loved teaching, loved seeing her students learn and grow. She loved the challenge of reaching the difficult students, the joy of seeing the eager ones excel. And she loved her time with Zachary. He came to town several times a week to see her, and she often rode out to the ranch on Saturdays to visit him and Mrs. Chen. They attended church together, went to community dances and socials, and became one of Bandera's established couples. In November, Zachary took Victoria on a ride to a place he had not shown her before, a high meadow on his property with a view that seemed to stretch forever. The grass was golden with autumn, and the trees had turned beautiful shades of red and orange. "I have been thinking about the future a lot lately," Zachary said as they stood looking out over the landscape. "About what I want my life to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now." "And what do you see?" Victoria asked, moving closer to him. "I see you," he said simply, turning to face her. "I see a house full of love and laughter, maybe some children running around, hopefully making this ranch even bigger and better. I see growing old with you, Victoria, if you will have me." He pulled a small box from his pocket and dropped to one knee. Victoria's hands flew to her mouth as tears started streaming down her face. "Victoria Foster, you came into my life like a miracle on the worst day of your life, and you have made every day since then better just by being in it. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife?" "Yes," Victoria said through her tears. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." The ring was simple but beautiful, a gold band with a small ruby. "It was my grandmother's," Zachary explained as he slipped it onto her finger. "My ma sent it to me last month when I wrote to tell her I had met someone special. She said she always hoped I would find a woman worthy of it, and you are, Victoria. You are worthy of everything good in this world." They kissed there in the meadow, sealing their promise to each other, as the sun shone down on them and the wind rustled through the golden grass. Victoria felt a joy so intense it was almost painful. 6 months ago she had arrived in Bandera with nothing but tears and a broken dream. Now she had a home, a career she loved, and a man who cherished her beyond measure. They were married in December, on a crisp, clear day that seemed designed perfectly for a wedding. The ceremony was held in the small church in Bandera, with what seemed like half the town in attendance. Mrs. Chen cried happy tears and served as Victoria's matron of honor. One of Zachary's ranch hands, a grizzled cowboy named Pete who had worked for him since the beginning, served as best man. Victoria wore a dress she had sewn herself from white muslin, with lace at the collar and cuffs that Mrs. Robertson had contributed from the general store. She carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Zachary had picked that morning. She had never felt more beautiful or more loved than when she walked down the aisle and saw Zachary waiting for her at the altar, his eyes shining with emotion. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began, and Victoria felt her heart soar. When Zachary kissed her as his wife for the first time, the church erupted in applause and cheers. They walked back down the aisle hand in hand, grinning at each other like fools, ready to start their life together. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up outside and food contributed by half the community. There was music and dancing, and Victoria danced with Zachary until her feet hurt, then danced some more. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with the food, and there was more than enough for everyone. As the sun began to set, Zachary pulled Victoria away from the party for a moment alone. They walked out to the porch where they had first sat together all those months ago, when Victoria had been a broken, weeping stranger and Zachary had been her unexpected savior. "Are you happy?" he asked, pulling her close. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," Victoria said honestly. "When I arrived in Bandera, I thought my life was over, but it was really just beginning. You know what the best part is?" Zachary said, kissing her forehead. "This is just the start. We have got a whole lifetime ahead of us, darling, a whole lifetime of days like this." Victoria leaned into him, feeling the solid strength of him, the warmth of his love surrounding her. "I cannot wait," she whispered. As Victoria's first school year continued, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. She would teach during the week, staying in her cottage in town, and spend weekends at the ranch with Zachary. It was not ideal being apart so much, but they both understood the importance of her teaching position and her maintaining her independence in the eyes of the community. Still, they looked forward to the summer break when they could be together all the time. The winter was mild by northern standards but cold enough by Texas ones. Victoria learned to keep the fire going in her little cottage and to layer her clothes. Her students progressed beautifully, even the challenging ones. Young Emma learned to read simple words and was so proud of herself. Thomas completed his arithmetic lessons ahead of schedule and started studying basic geometry. The parents of Bandera were pleased with their new teacher. Victoria made a point of communicating regularly with them about their children's progress, and she treated each child as an individual with unique needs and strengths. It was exhausting work, but she loved it. In February, Victoria received a letter from her aunt in Philadelphia. She tore it open eagerly, curious what news it might contain. "My dearest Victoria, I was so relieved to receive your letter and to learn that you are safe and happy. Your uncle and I have been worried about you ever since you left, though I confess the worry was much greater before your letter arrived. I am sorry that things did not work out with Mr. Morrison as planned, but it sounds as though fate had other ideas for you. Your description of Mr. Quinn sounds wonderful. He seems like exactly the sort of man who will appreciate you and treat you well. I am so happy you found love, true love, not just a practical arrangement like you would have had with Mr. Morrison. I have some news of my own. Your uncle has finally agreed to stop drinking. After you left, I think he realized how his behavior had driven you away, and it shocked him into making changes. He has been sober for 2 months now and is like the man I married 20 years ago. It is not easy for him, but he is trying. I am also enclosing a small gift. I found this in your mother's things after you left. I think she would have wanted you to have it for your wedding. The package contained a beautiful lace shawl that had belonged to Victoria's mother, carefully wrapped in tissue paper. Victoria held it to her face and breathed in deeply, but it no longer smelled like her mother. Still, having this piece of her past, this connection to the woman who had loved her and shaped her, meant the world. She wore the shawl to church the next Sunday, and Zachary noticed immediately. "That is beautiful," he said. "Is it new?" "It was my mother's," Victoria explained, telling him about the letter from her aunt. "I am glad to have it. It feels like she is here with me in some small way." "She would be proud of you," Zachary said. "Everything you have accomplished, the life you have built. Any mother would be proud." Spring came to Bandera in a riot of wildflowers and warm sunshine. The bluebonnets covered the fields in waves of purple, and Zachary took Victoria on rides through the most beautiful areas. They talked about the future constantly now, making plans for after the school year ended. "I have been thinking," Zachary said one April evening as they sat on the porch of Victoria's cottage. "The ranch house has plenty of room, but I was thinking maybe we could add on a bit. Build a bigger kitchen, maybe add another bedroom or 2 for when we have children. What do you think?" "I think that sounds wonderful," Victoria said, leaning against him. "How many children do you want?" "As many as we are blessed with," Zachary replied. "I came from a big family and I loved it. But I will be happy with whatever we get. As long as I have you, I have everything I need." In May, as the school year drew to a close, Victoria threw an end-of-year celebration for her students and their families. There were recitations and demonstrations of what the children had learned, and refreshments provided by the parents. The event was a huge success, and several parents thanked Victoria specifically for the progress their children had made. "Emma loves school now," Emma's mother told Victoria. "She used to drag her feet every morning, but now she cannot wait to go. You have a real gift for teaching, Mrs. Quinn." Hearing herself called Mrs. Quinn still gave Victoria a little thrill. She was married, she was a teacher, she was a respected member of the community. It was everything she had hoped for and more. When summer finally arrived, Victoria moved back to the ranch full-time. It felt like coming home in a way the cottage never quite had. This was where she belonged, with Zachary and Mrs. Chen, surrounded by the beauty of the Texas landscape she had grown to love. The summer was busy with ranch work, and Victoria helped where she could. She was not much use with the cattle, but she could manage the chickens and the garden, and she helped Mrs. Chen with preserving and canning for the winter. It was satisfying work, building up their stores, preparing for the future. In July, Victoria realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another week to be sure, then another, before finally telling Zachary. "I think I might be expecting," she said one evening after supper. "I am not certain yet, but all the signs are there." The look of pure joy on Zachary's face was something Victoria would remember for the rest of her life. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with delight. "A baby." "We are going to have a baby. It appears so," Victoria said, laughing at his enthusiasm. "Are you happy?" "Happy, I am thrilled. This is the best news, Victoria, the very best." Over the next weeks, as Victoria's symptoms continued and it became more certain that she was indeed pregnant. They began making plans. Victoria would continue teaching through the fall, but she would need to stop sometime in the winter, probably after Christmas. They would need to hire a temporary teacher for the rest of the year. Then Victoria could return to teaching the following fall once the baby was a bit older, if she wanted to. Mrs. Chen was delighted by the news and immediately began knitting tiny baby clothes. "A baby in the house again," she said happily. "It has been too long." Victoria wrote to her aunt with the news and received an enthusiastic reply along with a package of baby things her aunt had been saving. She also received a letter from Zachary's mother, welcoming her to the family properly and expressing joy at the news of the coming grandchild. As fall approached and Victoria prepared to return to teaching, she felt truly blessed. She had a husband who loved her, a career that fulfilled her, a baby on the way, and a home that felt right in every way. It was more than she had dared to dream of when she had stepped off that stagecoach in tears less than a year and a half ago. The second school year went even better than the first. Victoria's confidence as a teacher had grown, and her students responded well to her. The older students who had been a bit skeptical the year before now respected her, and the younger ones adored her. Several parents told her that their children talked about Miss Victoria. They still called her that at school, constantly at home. In November, as Victoria's pregnancy became more obvious, the women of Bandera threw her a baby shower. It was a touching event, with gifts both practical and beautiful. Victoria received hand-sewn baby clothes, soft blankets, a beautiful cradle that one father had made, and countless offers of help and advice. "You are part of our community now," Mrs. Robertson said warmly. "We take care of our own." Victoria taught through Christmas, then reluctantly handed over her classroom to a temporary teacher, an older woman from Careville who had taught for many years before retiring. It was hard to leave her students, but Victoria knew it was time. She was now 7 months along and growing more tired easily. The winter months passed peacefully. Victoria spent her days at the ranch, preparing for the baby, helping Mrs. Chen with indoor tasks, and resting when Zachary insisted she needed to. He had become almost comically protective, worrying about her constantly. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Victoria told him with amusement when he tried to stop her from reaching for something on a high shelf. I know, Zachary said, looking sheepish. "But you are carrying the most precious thing in the world to me. I cannot help but worry." In late March, Victoria went into labor. It was a long, difficult labor that lasted through the night and into the next day. Mrs. Chen stayed with her the whole time, along with the doctor from Bandera. Zachary paced outside the bedroom, worrying himself sick. Finally, in the early afternoon of March 28, 1873, Victoria gave birth to a healthy baby boy. He had dark hair like his father, and when he finally opened them, blue-gray eyes that might lighten or might stay that shade. "A son," Zachary breathed when he was finally allowed into the room. He looked at the tiny baby in Victoria's arms with such wonder that it brought tears to her eyes. "We have a son." "We have a son," Victoria agreed, exhausted but happier than she could express. "Would you like to hold him?" Zachary took the baby with careful, uncertain hands, looking terrified he might drop or break this tiny person. But he quickly relaxed, gazing down at his son with absolute love. "What should we name him?" Victoria asked. They had discussed names but never quite decided. Now, looking at her husband holding their son, Victoria knew what felt right. "What about William?" she suggested. "After your father." Zachary looked up, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "William Quinn, I like that a lot. Pa would have been proud." Baby William was a good baby, healthy and strong. He nursed well and slept reasonably well, though the first few weeks were exhausting as Victoria and Zachary adjusted to parenthood. Mrs. Chen was invaluable, helping with everything and giving the new parents breaks when they desperately needed rest. Victoria did not return to teaching that spring, choosing instead to focus on her son. The temporary teacher agreed to finish out the school year, and Victoria told the school board she would return in the fall if they wanted her back. "Of course we want you back," Mrs. Robertson said. "You are the best teacher we have had in years, but we understand that your son comes first." That summer was one of the happiest of Victoria's life. William grew rapidly, becoming more alert and interactive. Zachary was a devoted father, always eager to hold his son and play with him. Victoria loved watching them together, loved seeing the tender side of her strong cowboy husband. In August, they baptized William at the church in Bandera, with Mrs. Chen and Pete the ranch hand standing as godparents. The whole community came out for the event, and the celebration afterward at the ranch was joyful. Victoria did return to teaching that fall, but only 3 days a week. Zachary had built an addition onto the ranch house as promised, including a larger kitchen and 2 extra bedrooms. Mrs. Chen watched William on the days Victoria taught, and Victoria spent the other days at home with her son. It was a good balance, allowing Victoria to continue the work she loved while also being present for her baby. The arrangement worked well for everyone. The years passed in a pattern of seasons and celebrations. William grew from baby to toddler to young boy, full of energy and curiosity. When he was 3, Victoria became pregnant again, this time with a daughter they named Sarah Rose, after Zachary's youngest sister and the wild roses that grew all over the ranch. The ranch continued to prosper under Zachary's management. He expanded his herd, improved his breeding stock, and built a reputation as an honest, fair rancher. The Quinn Ranch became known as one of the best operations in the area. Victoria continued to teach part-time, beloved by her students and respected by the community. She watched children grow up, taught siblings and eventually some of her former students' children. She made a real difference in Bandera, and she knew it. Mrs. Chen became like a grandmother to William and Sarah, spoiling them appropriately and providing wisdom when needed. She remained healthy and active well into her 60s, an integral part of the Quinn household. When William was 7 and Sarah was 4, Victoria became pregnant once more, surprising them all. This time she gave birth to twin boys, Jonathan and James, who kept the entire household on their toes with their boundless energy and mischievous natures. 4 children, Zachary said one evening, looking around at their noisy, happy family. "Can you believe we have 4 children?" "I can barely believe I have any of this," Victoria replied honestly. "Sometimes I still think about that day I arrived in Bandera, crying on the boardwalk with nowhere to go. If you had not been there, if you had not helped me, my life would be completely different." "But I was there," Zachary said, pulling her close. "I think I was always meant to be there. You were always meant to be mine, and I was always meant to be yours." As the children grew, life remained full and busy. William showed an aptitude for ranching and spent as much time as he could with his father, learning the business. Sarah was quieter, more bookish, and loved helping her mother with teaching. The twins were wild and adventurous, always getting into some scrape or another, but always together, inseparable from birth. Victoria eventually reduced her teaching to just 1 or 2 days a week, then finally retired when the twins started school themselves. She had taught for nearly 15 years, impacting hundreds of students, and she felt satisfied with what she had accomplished. Her retirement allowed her to focus more on the ranch and her family. She took over more of the business management side, keeping the books and handling correspondence, which freed Zachary up to focus on the cattle and land management. They made a good team, complementing each other's strengths. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep when Victoria was 42, having lived to see all 4 Quinn children grow into fine young people. Her loss was felt deeply by the entire family. They buried her in the Bandera cemetery with a headstone that read, "Beloved friend and family, forever in our hearts." By the time Victoria and Zachary reached their 50s, all 4 children were grown. William took over management of the ranch with his father, having married a rancher's daughter from nearby Careville. Sarah became a teacher herself, taking over Victoria's old position at the Bandera school. The twins, now steady young men, ran a horse breeding operation on a portion of the Quinn land that Zachary had deeded to them. Victoria and Zachary were grandparents several times over, with William providing them 3 grandchildren, Sarah 2, and the twins just starting their families. One evening in early summer, when Victoria was 55 and Zachary 59, they sat together on the porch of their ranch house, the same porch where he had first told her she was home. The sun was setting in brilliant shades of orange and pink, and the sound of their grandchildren playing in the yard drifted to them on the warm breeze. "Did you ever imagine this?" Victoria asked, leaning against Zachary's shoulder. "All those years ago when you found me crying in town." "I hoped," Zachary said, his arm around her. "I looked at you and I saw courage and strength, even though you were hurting. I saw a woman who would fight for her happiness, who would not give up. But did I imagine all this? 4 children, grandchildren, a life so full of love and joy. No, I could not have imagined anything this good." "You saved me that day," Victoria said softly. "You dried my tears and told me I was home, and you made it true. You gave me a home, a family, a life beyond anything I could have dreamed." "You saved me too," Zachary replied. "I did not even know I needed saving, but I did. This ranch was just a ranch before you, nice enough, but empty in all the ways that matter. You filled it with love and laughter. You made it a home." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun finished setting and the stars began to emerge. After more than 3 decades of marriage, they did not always need words. They understood each other in that deep way that comes from years of sharing everything, good and bad, joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. "I would do it all again," Victoria said eventually. "Every bit of it exactly the same, even the hard parts, even arriving here crying with nothing, because it led me to you." "Same here, darling," Zachary said, kissing the top of her head. "Every single moment. You are still the best thing that ever happened to me, then, now, always." As the evening darkened and the children called the grandchildren inside to get ready for bed, Victoria felt a profound sense of peace. Her life had not turned out anything like she had planned when she left Philadelphia all those years ago. It had turned out infinitely better. She had love, family, purpose, and a home that was truly hers. She had built a legacy in Bandera, through her teaching and through her children, who were all good people making positive contributions to the community. And she had Zachary, her partner, her love, the man who had dried her tears and promised her safety when she had nothing and no one. He had kept that promise every single day since. He had given her everything. The Quinn Ranch continued to thrive under William's management, with Zachary now semi-retired but still involved in the big decisions. Victoria spent her days enjoying her grandchildren, reading, tending her beloved garden, and occasionally substitute teaching when the school was in a bind. She and Zachary took long rides together when the weather was nice, revisiting all their favorite spots, remembering their early days together. One beautiful day in autumn, when Victoria was 63, she and Zachary rode out to the meadow where he had proposed to her all those years ago. The grass was golden again, just as it had been that day, and the view was as breathtaking as ever. "I love this place," Victoria said as they stood looking out over the land. "It is where our forever began." "Our forever is not over yet," Zachary said, and though his hair was white now and his face more lined, his eyes still held the same love they had held that day. "We have got a lot of years left, you and I," and they did. They lived well into their 80s, Victoria passing first, peacefully, surrounded by children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. Zachary followed not long after, unable to imagine life without his beloved Victoria. They were buried side by side in the Bandera cemetery, under a large oak tree, their headstones simple but meaningful. Victoria Quinn, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, teacher, friend. She came to Bandera with tears but left with love. Zachary Quinn, devoted husband, father, grandfather, rancher, friend. He dried her tears and gave her home. Their love story became something of a legend in Bandera, passed down through generations. The story of the mail-order bride who arrived crying, and the cowboy who dried her tears and told her she was home. The story of how tragedy and loss led to love and family. The story of two people who found each other exactly when they both needed finding. And in the hearts of their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, in the continued success of the Quinn Ranch, in the legacy of education Victoria left in Bandera, their love lived on. They had built something lasting, something real, something beautiful. They had taken broken pieces and created something whole. They had taken tears and turned them into laughter. They had taken a chance meeting on a dusty boardwalk and turned it into a lifetime of love. That was their story, and it was a good one. From that first moment when Zachary had dried Victoria's tears and promised her she was home, through decades of building a life together, through children and challenges and countless small, perfect moments. A love story for the ages, simple and profound, painful and joyful, real and lasting. In the end, that is what mattered most. Not the hardships they had overcome, not the obstacles they had faced, but the love they had built together. A love that had started with compassion and grown into something extraordinary. A love that had filled their lives with meaning and purpose. A love that had created a family and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. Victoria had arrived in Bandera with nothing but tears and a broken dream. But she had found something far better than what she had lost. She had found home. She had found family. She had found Zachary. And that had made all the difference.